fake drug is such a bad news. It is mass murder. The evil of fake drugs cannot be compared with any. But unfortunately, the world is not giving it enough attention. As evidenced by the fact that as I speak, there is no harmonized definition of counterfeit drug. Every country has their own definition. How can we carry out the fight with that kind of behavior or situation?
In the early 2000s, Nigeria was drowning with counterfeit drugs, pills that could kill, and syrups that could paralyze. The streets were filled with death disguised as medicine. For too long, no one took action or dared to confront the issue. That was until Dora Akunyili stepped onto the scene. This is not an ordinary story about a public servant in Nigeria. It is the story of a woman who faced corruption head-on without blinking. A woman who entered the depths of a broken system and resolved not to be broken herself. Even while battling cancer, later in her life, she stood taller than many of her peers ever could. She continued to fight, not for fame or political gain, but to save the lives of Nigerians. This one woman took a billion-naira fake drug empire and nearly paid for it with her life. This is Dora Akunyili. In this edition of Back in History, we take you through her life and her fight for Nigeria. Long before she became the face of integrity in Nigeria, she was just Dora Akunyili. Born in Makurdi, Benue State, Nigeria, to Chief Paul Young Akunyili, who hailed from Nanka, Anambra State, Dora grew up in a world where medicine wasn't always medicine, a world where medicine could just as easily harm or even kill. Vivian, her younger sister, was ill, and everyone believed it was an illness that could be easily treated with medication. However, a tragedy struck the family when the very symbol of hope, the medication that was administered on her, turned out to be the very thing that took her life. Vivian died, not because Nigeria did not have doctors at the time, not because the family did not act quickly. Vivian died because someone somewhere decided profits mattered more than the people. That death carved something permanent into Dora's heart, an eternal question: how many others will die like my sister Vivian? A question that followed her through medical school, through motherhood, and eventually through her stay as Director General of NAFDAC, where she declared a war against fake and adulterated drugs. But first, Dora did what society expected of her. She became a mother, a lecturer, a pharmacist, a wife to Jesse Akunyili, and a brilliant woman just hiding in plain sight. She wasn't making waves yet, just at the time. By the early 2000s, Nigeria was home to fake and adulterated drugs in almost every corner of the country. Pills made in dirty warehouses, syrups mixed with chalk and sugar, injections that turned life into death, the kind of counterfeit poison that built empires for the marketers and graveyards for the poor. People were dying in hospitals, in homes, in clinics, and the country just went silent. Too many palms were greased. Too many officials looked the other way. But then, a call came. It was in 2001. President Olusegun Obasanjo wanted Dora Akunyili to head NAFDAC, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. It was supposed to be a quiet post, as it is in most cases. Bureaucratic, box ticking. Stay in the office, shuffle the papers, collect your salary, and leave the office when your tenure expires. But as for Dora Akunyili, she rolled up her sleeves as she had a different plan. She accepted the offer not to sit at the desk, but to burn the whole house down to destroy fake and adulterated drugs and related products. In her first week, she stormed markets in Onitsha and Kano, seizing cartons of fake medicines worth millions and even billions of naira. She shut down pharmacies, named and shamed big players. No bribe could stop her, no threats could scare her. The newspapers said, "Who is this woman?" The drug lord said, "Let's kill her." But for Dora, she said nothing. She just kept moving. Because here is the thing. She wasn't fighting for press coverage. She wasn't even fighting for Obasanjo. She was fighting for Vivian, her sister, and for every Nigerian citizen who has reason to take medication. And in doing so, she declared a war that would nearly take her life. By the time Dora Akunyili was settling into her office in NAFDAC, the enemies had already encircled. And they weren't small-time criminals. They were billionaires, syndicates, politically connected drug barons who had made a fortune poisoning Nigerians with impunity. They had laughed when she was first appointed, thinking she was just another government puppet. But then she kicked down their doors. She raided warehouses under police protection. She sealed up shops in broad daylight. And when she discovered that fake drugs were being smuggled into the country through the seaports, she took on the customs officers too. No one was untouchable. For the first time in decades, drug cartels were being hunted by a soft-spoken woman in traditional attire, armed only with intelligence, integrity, and an iron will. And they hated her for it. Markets like Idumota in Lagos and many other big markets in the country were her next battleground. Vendors scrambled when they saw NAFDAC jackets approaching. Dora Akunyili made sure her team was trained, protected, and relentless. They moved like a task force because they had to. Even behind the scene, many in government weren't pleased. She was rocking boats too often, big ones at that. The attacks kept coming. Death threats, ambushes. At one point, gunmen opened fire on her convoy in Anambra State. But there was nothing stopping this very woman. She was no longer just a regulator. She had become a symbol of what Nigeria could be if just one person could say no to corruption. And slowly the public began to rally around her. Women saw her as a role model. Doctors and pharmacists idolized her. Ordinary Nigerian citizens cheered her up. Even the media couldn't help but admire the woman who waged war on a billion naira industry with nothing but guts and guard. But Dora wasn't done. She had bigger plans and bigger enemies too. In no time, NAFDAC was no longer a sleepy government agency. Under Dora Akunyili, it had become one of the most active arms of the federal government of Nigeria and easily the most feared by criminals in the pharmaceutical trade. But what made her method so effective wasn't just courage, it was strategy. Dora Akunyili revolutionized NAFDAC's operations by introducing systems that made it difficult for counterfeiters to hide. She insisted on stricter registration protocols for imported and locally manufactured drugs. She launched massive awareness campaigns on radio and television, educating Nigerian citizens about the dangers of fake medication. NAFDAC began publishing lists of banned products. Their mobile teams carried out impromptu raids, sealed off illegal factories, and confiscated tons of fake medicines. For the first time, people started checking for NAFDAC numbers on products before buying and even before consuming them. And behind all these was a woman working 18-hour days, reviewing reports, visiting hospitals, meeting with pharmacists, and planning next moves like a general in wartime. But not all her battles were on the streets. Inside the system, there were cracks. Some government officials were either complicit or indifferent. Others felt threatened by her growing popularity. Bureaucratic bottlenecks slowed her work. Corrupt customs officials turned a blind eye at the port, allowing banned drugs to re-enter the country after she had fought so hard, so expelled them. She did not hide her frustration. She called out institutions that failed to collaborate, but she never gave up. It became clear Dora Akunyili was not just fighting fake drugs, she was fighting a deeply compromised system, and the cost was heavy.
Bribery in all sectors. I don't think there's any sector in Nigeria that is honestly left out. I cannot start lying out of patriotism. There's no sector that is left out. But the worst felt area is in health.
Dora Akunyili lived with a target on her back. Yes, she was strong, but she was human. Behind the smile and public speeches, there was exhaustion. There was fear. Still, she pressed on. Under her leadership, NAFDAC secured international recognition. The World Health Organization praised Nigeria's anti-counterfeit strategy. Other African countries began consulting NAFDAC on how to build their own regulatory frameworks. Pharmaceutical companies started seeing Nigeria as a more serious market. But progress wasn't linear. Sometimes warehouses were busted only for operations to resume the next month. Some drug lords were arrested and quickly released by the security agencies. The very rot she was trying to clean up kept regenerating like a virus in a body without immunity, and yet she never gave up. Her story had now become a litmus test for Nigeria itself. Could one person with the right support and unwavering integrity truly change a broken system? As the years rolled on, the public began to believe it was possible. Parents credited her with saving the lives of their children. Hospitals started seeing fewer cases of drug-resistant infections. Counterfeit markets across the country shrank. But it wasn't over. Dora's next chapter would take her far beyond NAFDAC and into the unpredictable world of politics, where the weapons were no longer pills and poisons, but power plays and propaganda. When President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua appointed her as Minister of Information in December 2008, it seemed like a natural next step. Some saw it as a promotion. Others saw it as political exile, a way to sideline a woman who had become too powerful in her independence. Dora accepted the offer and became a minister. At first, her new post seemed misaligned with her strength. She had battled drug cartels and saved lives. Now she was tasked with managing public perception. But true to form, she gave it everything. She launched the Rebranding Nigeria campaign, a controversial effort to improve the country's image both locally and internationally. Critics called it cosmetic. Supporters said it was timely. Dora herself believed it was necessary. For Dora Akunyili, Nigeria couldn't just fight corruption. It had to reclaim its soul and image in the International Committee of Nations. But politics was a different battlefield. There were no fake drugs to seize, no factories to shut down. Here, enemies smiled in public and stabbed in silence. The rules were messier. The victories were ambiguous. Yet, even in this space, Dora Akunyili did not back down. During the constitutional crisis triggered by President Yar'Adua's prolonged illness in 2009, most public officials stayed silent, but not Dora Akunyili. She broke ranks, demanding that power be formally handed over to Vice President Goodluck Jonathan in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That move cost her politically, personally. Quiet threats returned. Old allies turned cold, but she had always been more committed to truth than comfort. And then came along a brutal personal war no security detail could protect her from: cancer. Even then, she remained active, refusing to let the disease define her legacy. Her health worsened over the years. She traveled abroad for treatment, to no avail, but by 2014, the battle was over. Dora Akunyili died on June 7, 2014, at just the age of 59. Today, people don't just remember Dora as someone who worked in Nigeria, but one who worked for Nigeria. And though she did not live to see a perfect system, she proved it was possible to stand tall within a crooked system. In a country that often forgets its heroes, Dora's legacy is carved into the DNA of every safe drug, every protected child, every factory shut down before it could claim more lives. Because long after the threats, the accolades, and even the funeral tributes, Dora Akunyili remains a benchmark, a reminder, a warning that the fight for Nigeria's soul isn't over, and that one honest voice can still change everything in the country. However, despite the change Dora Akunyili brought, Nigeria's struggle against fake medicines has worsened due to economic hardship, with authorities destroying $645 million worth of counterfeit medicines in March 2025 alone. The demand for fake drugs has increased as people seek cheaper alternatives fueled by inflation and porous borders that allow unregulated medicines to flood the market. It is also caused by the greed of the marketers. This poses significant health risk, with approximately 17% of pharmaceutical products in circulation being counterfeits. Many of these fake drugs are smuggled into Nigeria from countries outside Nigeria. The question now is, who will pick up the baton? Who will continue the fight from where Professor Dora Akunyili left it? Dora received her first school leaving certificate from St. Patrick's Primary School, Isofia, Anambra State in 1966, and had her West African school certificate examination at Queen of the Holy Rosary Secondary School, Nsukka, Enugu State in 1973, where she graduated with grade 1 distinction. Consequently, she won the Eastern Nigerian Government Post-Primary Scholarship and the Federal Government of Nigeria Undergraduate Scholarship. She went on to study pharmacy at the University of Nigeria Nsukka, graduating in 1978, and received a PhD in ethnopharmacology in 1985. She served on several state government boards and was named Supervisory Counselor for Agriculture in a local government unit in Anambra State. She worked as a hospital pharmacist in the University of Nigeria Teaching Hospital, Enugu State. In 1981, she became a graduate assistant in the University of Nigeria, teaching in the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences. In 1990, she became a senior lecturer, and in 1996, she was made a consultant pharmacologist at the College of Medicine. In 1996, Akunyili became Zonal Secretary of the Petroleum Special Trust Fund, PTF, during General Sani Abacha's administration, coordinating projects funded by profits from oil in Nigeria's southeastern states. Dora distinguished herself in this office and showed extreme transparency. In 2001, President Olusegun Obasanjo appointed her the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC. While in office, she was promoted to the rank of full Professor of Pharmacy at the University of Nigeria Nsukka, where she had served as a lecturer for many years and had done remarkably well both in teaching, research, and publication. While in NAFDAC, she received several awards for her distinctive role in the fight against fake and adulterated drugs in Nigeria. These awards were given to her from institutions in Nigeria and institutions from outside Nigeria. She wrote her name in gold in the annals of public administration in Nigeria, and her name will be remembered for good across Africa and the world for many more years to come. Thank you for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel or follow the page for regular notification on every new video. I am your friend and host, her.May, wishing you the best of time in all you do.